All right, Rav Mayafil, please teach us from Halacha.
Okay, Rosh Hashiva, Talmidei Chachamim, Tzadikim, those are the three of you I'm referring to. Okay, we finished the book. I'll just do some definitions, then we'll finish this book.
Okay,
I haven't had much time to think of what new material to go through. So just a couple of definitions. There's a thing called the Eruv Chatzerot. Eruv Chatzerot is it's a communal area where you can carry. They call it Eruv Chatzerot. It's not, we call it Eruv, but that's the full term. Then you get something called the Eruv Tavshilin. It's got nothing to do with the actual area of the Eruv. Eruv Tavshilin is food prepared to create an Eruv. Because if you need to create one, you have to put food in certain places within a certain distance of your home in order to carry in a public domain. So then that's called an Eruv. So you get an Eruv, and then you get a Eruv Techumim. And the Techum is the boundary. Techum is the part of the boundary of your area of the city where you can't go further than that. Eruv, which is called the Techum. So that's so if you ever heard that we hear the word Techum, it means a place you cannot go past. You can't go past that point. And let's just see a couple more. Let's just see. Okay, there's a term called hatmana. Hatmana means insulating hot food using external material such as a towel or a cloth, just to keep it warm. Yes, and we've done these before. We'll just do them once more to refresh our memories. Kli Rishon, first vessel, which Rishon means first, where you pour into a second vessel called a Kli Sheni, and then only are you allowed to use that hot, let's say, boiling water from an urn. You can't pour it directly into a cup. You have to pour it into a second vessel, then into a third vessel, which is the Kli Shlishi. Then you are allowed to use it. Okay. A kazayat is a minimum quantity, a size to say a bracha on, such as an olive. That's let's just say, okay, malava malka. You guys have heard of this, which is a meal served after the Shabbos. It's actually a good thing. You get at the determination of Shabbos, like now, you have a meal where you say a bracha, either amotzi or mezonot, and you have in mind it's for the mitzvah. I don't always do this because sometimes I overeat, but it's a very good thing to do. And there we go, Damon. Pesik Reisha. Remember, so Pesik Reisha, which we've covered in the Gemara. Let's just finish with this one. A permitted activity which is forbidden because it'll inevitably result in a malacha. We actually did it a few days ago.
Correct.
Examples. So
okay, we've hit 6 minutes.
Yeah, that's it.
That's the example.
Okay. Yeah, like you're throwing out old dirty water. Don't throw it on the grass because it's going to water the grass.
Correct.
Throw it onto concrete or stone.
Correct.
Then that watering the grass is a malacha. Something like that. Anyway. Okay, cool.
Well done. Those definitions are important. They're very, very important.
Okay, then I'll try to think of something for next time because we finished. This is the book we finished, guys.
Okay. Can I ask a favor? I'll tell you what might be nice this week is some halachas of Hanukkah, which would be good.
I'll try.
Okay.
That would be delightful, Damon. Huh?
Yeah. Okay. Good.
Let's get to Chandra. Yeah.
7 minutes in. All right. So listen, I'm going to do a few minutes of revision just so I can flow a bit. So we were learning a law about a custodian. It was stated regarding one who watches a lost object, Rabbi says that it's treated as a unpaid custodian, who is liable for damages to the article in his care only if he was negligent. Rav Yosef said that the person who found the lost item, he is treated as a paid custodian who is liable even if he was not negligent. So what we learned from there very, very simply is that there are 2 points of responsibility. Okay. Firstly, this came from where I showed you the other day, Deuteronomy chapter 22, verse 2, where it says, if your brother, the owner of the lost object, is not near you and you do not know him, then gather it inside your house until your brother inquires after it and you return it to him. All right. So basically, how's the person of a lost object viewed in terms of responsibility? If you say he's a paid custodian, in terms of the higher level of responsibility, he has to do a superior guarding, meaning he's responsible even if it's lost or stolen, not just if he's negligent. Whereas if he's seen as an unpaid custodian, he's only responsible if he was negligent, but not if it was lost or stolen. Rabbi sees him as an unpaid custodian. And what's the reason, guys? Do you remember? Testing you. Simple. It's a simple answer.
He's not paid, so why should he? What do you mean? Rabbi sees him as not liable or an unpaid?
No,
custodian?
Kevin, you answered it. That's wonderful. Kevin answered it.
Okay. I just
So Kevin said the truth. He said, look, this guy's not getting paid. He found a lost object. He's looking after it. So since he's not paid for the task, why should you treat him as a paid custodian and say he's so much responsibility? Makes sense, right? So then they say to Rav Yosef, well, how do you view him as a paid custodian? Guys, what's the answer? There's two answers. What's the first answer given?
Why do you view him as a paid custodian?
What's the logic from Rav Yosef?
I think I remember.
Try.
He said, as a paid custodian, he doesn't have to give tzedakah because his mind is preoccupied.
Very good. Arthur answered it perfectly. So the rule is exact. I just want to clarify Arthur, but Arthur said the perfect answer. Because how it works is as follows. There's a rule that says when one who is occupied with the performance of a mitzvah is exempt from performing any other mitzvah. Okay? So the Gemara, it's a Gemara in Sukkah 25a, right? So what it's saying is that if you engage in a particular mitzvah, in this case, maintaining a lost object, you're not obligated to give charity to a poor man who solicits because you're busy with another mitzvah at the time of looking after this object, okay? And that's why it's off the hook, because as a Ferengi rule goes, money saved is money earned.
But then the other rabbi said that, which is not correct. He argued with him at that.
Yes, Rabbi argued.
It's not something like you're feeding the animal 24 hours a day or whatever. So you're not actually the chances of you feeding the animal and in the mitzvah of doing it and finding a beggar, it's very unlikely that's going to happen.
Perfect. Arthur, you're on fire tonight. So what Arthur's saying is perfectly.
All because of you, Damon. I remember from your last speech you told me. I was listening actually.
So Rabbi said exactly as Arthur explained, that he said, look, let's be real here. I mean, you're either finding an inanimate object or you're finding an animate object. If it's inanimate, okay, so the second you pick it up on the floor and you put it in your house, at that second you're preoccupied. Somebody's asking you at the time for something. Okay, that gets you off the hook. And what about when it's in your house for the next month? You're free from obligation of tzedakah. What are you talking about? And if it's an animal where you've got to feed it, what you're feeding it 24/7, you're gonna have no money left. What are you talking about? In that particular case, you're not busy 24/7 as far as that's concerned. You've got time for other stuff. It's got feeding times. So the rest of the time, it exonerates you for the rest of the month. You don't have to do shachrit, mincha, and mariv. You don't have to look. Sorry, guys, I found an ashtray. Sorry, guys, I'm feeding a chicken. I don't do shachrit, mincha, and mariv. I'm feeding the chicken. So naturally, it doesn't fly. Speaking of chickens. So the question you've got to ask, is this something I thought of now? Actually, if you're feeding that animal, and it's costing you money, why aren't you allowed to get compensated for that? Just a separate question. Would be interesting.
It's not covered there at all. I mean, it's
but I know that, but I'm saying you might be. But that's
a good question. It's a good
so
question.
therefore, if you're covered for that, are you paid? And the question is, no, you're reimbursed for losses. So you can still see unpaid custodian. Now, what's Rav Yosef's answer to that? Or how do some of the rabbis answer Rav Yosef's other answer, which is a good one. In other words, why is he seen as a paid custodian, according to Rav Yosef? What's the reason?
Can I answer that? Can I try?
Go for it.
Because if somebody looks after something, then they should give the utmost attention and care to it as if they are paid. Doesn't matter if they're paid or not. I think that might be the answer.
No, but you're close. You've definitely answered.
If you look after something, you're not going to you're going to take care of it. Even as if you volunteer, you have to be responsible.
Well, you're about 40% correct. I'd say that's pretty impressive. I'll tell you what you're missing, but you're pretty close. Gav, you want to give it a stab?
Gavin try. 60%.
So, from my understanding, is that the paid custodian, why he's considered a paid custodian, is because of the fact. What is the question again? Sorry, Damon, I'm just a bit busy, but I know what's going on.
No, it's fine. It's a good question. I have to rephrase it. I'm saying, what is Rav Yosef's response to Rabba as to why he deems the person that found the lost object as a paid custodian? That's the question.
Okay, this is my interpretation after reading what I read today, is that
yes,
basically you need to look after somebody else's property even better than you look after your own. So you have to give it a secure guarding.
Okay, no, you off track. Kevin's actually a little closer. Morally, Gavin, you're correct. Morally, you're correct in the sense that what every Jew should do to another is different to how Jews actually do to another. Why? Because otherwise the courts would not be full. Think about this. You wouldn't have a court if everybody did what they needed to do. There wouldn't be a beis din in the Sanhedrin. The fact that we don't do what we're supposed to do, as Gavin suggested, is the reason why we have court cases. But Gavin, as an ideal, you're correct. But that's not the answer. Kevin was onto it a little bit more accurately. Because
what did Kevin say? You can expand on
that? Kevin was basically saying in terms of level of responsibility, but he geared it a little bit more towards the answer. And I'll tell you what the answer is, and then you understand where Kevin is coming from. Is he was saying, look, at the end of the day, you must know that the Torah says in Deuteronomy, you find a lost object, there is no choice. You have to look after it. It's a commandment. It doesn't matter if you feel like doing it or you don't feel like doing it. When Hashem tells you to do something, you do it. And you have to take a superior guarding. End of story. When your friend says to you, your fellow Jew, listen, I'm going away. I want you to look after my stuff. But by the way, if anything should happen, you'll end up in court. You're going to say, pal, either you pay me to take that sort of headache, or you pay some other schmuck or in other words, I'll look after it, but like kind of give me a break here. I'm doing you a favor. You're not paying me. I'm happy to look after your stuff, but I need a court case like a hole in the head. So either you drop him your sort of attitude of what you expect me to do, or you'll sue me, or get some other sucker to do it for free, or pay somebody, and then you can hold them liable. So the Torah said basically, as you and Kevin said in a way, is that you should look after somebody to that degree, your fellow Jew. You should. But if he's holding you that liable and you're not obligated, what do you want to complicate your life for with a possible court case? You don't need it in your life. You don't have to. You don't have to, because it's his stuff. If he decides to go on holiday, that's his choice. Either somebody will look after it for free, at which case you say, thank you, do your best. Or if you're going to obligate to somebody for that level of stringency, then you have to pay them for it. Then they become paid to watch it. And therefore that's required as a paid job where they are liable in court. Okay? Otherwise, nobody's going to step up to the plate. Here, Hashem's telling you to do it. So he's saying, listen, you've found a lost object. You look after it with the most superior guarding possible. And therefore, I'm not asking you, I'm telling you. So don't come with the excuse, it's not my problem. It is your problem. Therefore, you treat it as though you were paid. I'm giving you a commandment. Just do it. So that's the answer. So you treat it in terms of level of responsibility as though you were paid custodian, as though it was yours in a way. Fair enough, Gavin and Kevin. That's exactly it. Right. Now, basically, they're going to start to spar, Rab and Rav Yosef. And they're now going to throw a number of challenges against each other. So there's a mnemonic. So remember what a mnemonic is, guys?
Yeah.
Yes, a whole lot of
Yes.
words in a row with the comma next to them referring to the order of events.
Exactly. So Arthur's on fire today. So the mnemonic goes, he returned, comma, always, comma, returning, comma, here, comma, you say, comma, broken, comma, renter, smiley face.
I don't know what that means.
I see.
Go for it.
It's not a smiley face, it's a closed brackets. Okay. So basically, each term represents one of the 7 challenges that are going to be stated in the next 2 amudim. Okay, right. So now we're learning from a brisa. If he, the founder of a lost object, returned it to the place where the owner will see it, he is not obligated to deal with it further. So what does this mean, guys? If he's not obligated to deal with it further, it means if anything happens to the object, he's no longer responsible. Okay, but then it seems to say a contradictory statement. Okay, so as far as the first statement is concerned, look, it's saying it's not necessary for the finder to hand the object to the owner, or to leave it in, to hand it to him hand by hand and say it's yours, etc., or even to leave it into the house of the owner. Okay, it's enough that he drops it at his office where he doesn't own the property. That's even enough. It's just got to be an area where he sees it, where he frequents it often. Okay, and the minute he does that, like if he leaves it at the reception area of the place he works, it's enough. He's fulfilled his duty and he ceases to be responsible for it. But then there's a second part to that brisa that said if it is stolen or lost, he is responsible for it. So now that sounds like a contradiction, doesn't it?
Yeah.
First, I'm telling you, if you leave it at the guy's home, you don't even have to put it in his hand, you're not responsible. And then I said even further, if you leave it at a place he sees it that he technically doesn't even own, like his office, or puts it on his receptionist's table, that's good enough. So now the second part says if it's lost or stolen, he's responsible. So that seems like a contradiction. And it's on that basis that Rav Yosef develops his proof. He said, look, what is this Bryce's case of stolen or lost? It can't mean that it was stolen from the finder's home or lost from his home. Why? Because it just said that basically that the finder is no longer responsible after placing it there. So therefore, in order to solve the contradiction of the next statement, who says, if it's stolen and lost, he's responsible. If it's stolen and lost from where, Rav Yosef says. And he's saying basically, if it was stolen from the finder's home or lost from his home, then the brisa regards the finder as the paid custodian who is liable for theft and loss. So what he's saying is as follows, Rav Yosef. He says, look, you look at this brisa, we know you're not talking about the original owner's home. You drop it off there, you're off the hook. You can even drop it at his office. You're off the hook, no more responsible. But then if it's saying if it's lost or stolen, you're responsible, that can't be, it's a contradiction. So if it's lost or stolen, where? In the home of the person that found the object, which means what? That the person that finds it is liable for losses or stolen items, which means he's treated as a paid custodian. Because if he's an unpaid custodian, he wouldn't be held responsible for loss or any loss or something got stolen. Why? Because he's only responsible for negligence. And that's proving my case that he's a paid custodian from this brisa. Otherwise, he's not responsible for stolen or lost items. Can you see how he develops the proof?
Yeah.
Okay, now where's Arthur?
Not sure.
Okay. All right, so Arthur, just Arthur, what's going on? Arthur,
I was just asking my wife to turn the geese off, so I didn't want to hear me.
oh,
talking,
okay,
so I
okay.
was quiet.
So what I
Turn the
was
geese
saying
off.
is, just explain to me, so I know you've got it. How does Rav Yosef use this as a proof, this brisa, that the person that finds the lost object is regarded as a paid custodian in terms of level of responsibility? How does he use this Bryce as a proof?
Which one? Just say the name again. Yosef.
Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef
Yosef.
holds that a person that finds a lost object is held to the level of responsibility of a paid custodian. How does he use this Bryce as a proof?
But he's you're talking about if what you spoke about how it got stolen, like if it was stolen in your house.
Arthur,
For example, you're looking.
explain.
I'm trying to figure out what.
I'm going to repeat.
I'm trying to figure out what.
No, I understand it, but
I can understand.
Okay, I am.
Maybe
I'm gonna let me try it one more time. Rav Yosef holds that if somebody finds a lost object, they're responsible to the maximum for a superior guarding, not only for negligence, but for something that is stolen or lost that they found, like a paid custodian would be. Okay. What about this Brisa proves it? And I'm going to read the Brisa again because I don't expect you to memorize the Brisa. The Brisa states as follows. If he, the finder of the lost object, returned it to the place where the owner will see it, he is not obligated to deal with it further. In other words, he's not liable should anything happen to the object. If it is stolen or lost, he is responsible for it. So how does Rav Yosef use this as a proof?
Well, he probably uses the proof that if it was stolen from, because it was in your house and your possession at the time and it was stolen.
Whose house? Whose possession?
Responsible. Okay, and the guy's looking after it. It was in his house and somebody broke in and stole it.
Yeah.
That proves that you're a paid custodian. It says you're responsible as for it as well.
So why would it have to be in his house?
Because if it was at the other guy's place, you return it to it wouldn't be a problem because the guy, it's not your responsibility once you return it to the place. But if you're looking after it, and
excellent, Arthur, that is perfect. So what Rav Yosef says is exactly what Arthur says, is that the first part of the Brisa says, listen, the minute you take it to the guy's home, you've done your obligation. You don't have to hold it to him in his hand. You don't even have to return it to his property. You can drop it off at a place that he visits. Like his office or whatever the case may be. You've done your duty. You're not responsible. Immediately afterwards, the Brisa says you're responsible if it's stolen or lost. So he says it doesn't make sense. It seems contradictory. And he said it's not a contradiction because you're responsible if it's stolen or lost in your home when you found it. But the minute you return it to the original owner's home, you're not responsible, which means if you're responsible if it's stolen or lost in your home, you're like a paid custodian. You're not only responsible for negligence, but you're also responsible if it's stolen or lost, which means you are seen as a paid custodian. That's my proof. Otherwise, the Brisa would contradict each other. Excellent, Arthur. Oaks on fire tonight. Okay, good. So, what is Rabba's response to that? Does anybody remember?
Not at the moment.
Guys? Well, you learned
Rava
today.
says the opposite, obviously. Rava doesn't agree with it.
Kevin, that's a very sneaky, brilliant answer. But I'm looking for a little bit more.
Okay, I know.
Get 10 out of 10 for effort for that.
I don't know, maybe Rava says only, I don't know.
Gavin, you did the Chazoras today. What did it say?
But I kind of battled, there's so many names and so many different people. I'll be honest, I didn't cup it. I cupped 50% of it.
All right, so no problem. Let me give it to you so that we can cover a little bit of ground, okay? So Rabbi responds to Rav Yosef. He says, he defends his position. So he says, look, no, that's not the Brisa's meaning. Rather, the intent is that the object was stolen or lost from the place where the finder returned it. Okay? And then, so it says, so you're trying to figure out what does he mean by that. In other words, Rabbi holds that a finder is still an unpaid custodian who's generally exempt from liability for theft or loss. But he agrees that the finder is liable here because he acted negligently by returning the object in this manner. Meaning that Rabbi turns around and says, well, look, you can't just dump it at the Oak's office and hope he sees it. That's negligence. I still say it's an unpaid custodian, but it's negligence, okay? So Rav Yosef responds and says, look, it doesn't make sense what you're saying. Why? Because the Brisa taught in its first clause that the father returns it is not obligated to deal with it further. He shouldn't be liable. Are you arguing and saying that the Brisa is incorrect? Because that's what your statement is saying. It means you're clearly disagreeing with the Brisa. So do you agree with it or not? How do you disagree with the Brisa? It's a good answer, right? Okay. So Rabbi has to deal with it. So Rabbi said, look, let me just tell you what I'm saying here. We're dealing with a case where he returned it in the afternoon. So it's saying, all right, with the Brisa, the Gemara is saying to Rabbi, clarify what you mean. So he said, look, the first clause teaches that if you returned it in the morning to a place where the owner would see it, the morning is a time when the owner will frequently go in and out, and he will see it shortly. Then the finder is not obligated to deal with it any further. Why? Because since the object was returned in the morning, like shortly after the owner leaves the home, shortly before he leaves the home, right? The owner's going to see it before anything happens. So he's fulfilled this duty and he returned it in a secure manner. But if he chooses the afternoon to deliver it, that there's a huge time that elapses and the owner doesn't go frequently in and out and he won't see it till later. So it affords the opportunity for it to be stolen or lost from his place. And that means that the finder was negligent to drop it off at that time. Why? Because if you look at it, the Gemara says in the morning a man is found in his house, but in the afternoon he is at work in the fields. That's Rashi's opinion. It was an agricultural society. So even if the object was put in a place along the owner's daily route, it shouldn't be left in the afternoon because there's too much time that elapses. Could be stolen or lost, and that's negligence. If you're dropping it at a time where the person frequents that place, that's okay. But you can't 5 minutes before closing, for example. Let me just give you an example. You go to the Oaks office, 5 minutes before closing, the secretary's already ducked for a cigarette downstairs. So you put it on top of her diet table. You know that the guy only rocks up at his office at 10 because he's got morning's meetings. A heck of a lot can happen from 8 in the morning or when the cleaners close up for the evening to when 10 o'clock in the morning. The object's going to disappear. But if you go in the morning to the receptionist and you put it in and she says, oh, no, you say this belongs to such and such, or I don't know, but I know that it was left here from one of the guys in the office. Please, when somebody comes up, put up a sign and say, if lost, like claim me sort of thing, I don't know who it belongs to. If you don't know who it belongs to, you could have found it. But you know it was left outside the guy's office. It could be 3 employees, whoever. But that's a time where it's monitored by a PA or it's not going to be stolen by somebody. So your time determines your negligence. So that makes sense. It's a good answer by Rabbi. Okay. Yeah. Now Rav Yosef challenges Rabbi again. See how much time we've got. Okay, we've got time. So he challenged him from the continuation of the preceding brisa. It said the finder is always liable for theft or loss of the object until he returns it to the owner's domain. Now, what does this phrase means? The finder is always liable. Does it not mean that the finder is liable even if the object is stolen or lost from his house? Okay. So learn from here that one who watches a lost object is treated as a paid custodian. Okay. So what we're saying is as follows, is that basically by stating the word lo olam, always, the Bryce is teaching that the finder is liable even if he leaves the object in his house, even if his place is secure. That's according to Rashi. So obviously the Bryce can't mean he's liable if you return the object to a place where the owner will see it. At that point, he's not liable. But it must mean that even if he watched it properly, by leaving it at his own house or another safe location, he's liable up until that point of return. So Rav Yosef said, yes, but you haven't really answered the question of the second part of liability to the degree of satisfaction. So he's saying that, look, if you're responsible for the theft and loss, you're known as a paid custodian. So he says, I understand that you're seeing the previous clause as seeing theft and loss resulting from negligence because you dropped it off at the wrong time of the day. Okay, and basically, I'm basically saying that theft and loss is literally theft and loss, not negligence. Otherwise, it would have used the word negligence. Why use the word theft and loss? If you're referring to negligence, refer to negligence. So you say the fact that it says you're responsible for theft or loss, it basically means, or it's stolen and it's lost, that you're seen as a paid custodian. So Rabba's response to Rav Yosef, he said to him, look, I can concede with you in the case of animals that the finder is liable for theft and loss. In other words, what he's saying to him is, yes, you're right. It doesn't use the word negligence. It uses the word theft and loss. So if that's the case, I concede that you have got a valid point. But what we're talking about here is animate objects, not inanimate objects. So animals. So as far as that's concerned, you are responsible for theft and loss because that's how you found the animal in the first place. I mean, the fact of it is it wandered out. How do you think you found it? So there you've got a higher level of responsibility because I concede to you in the case of animals that their finder is liable for theft and loss. For since they've developed the habit of taking steps outside, they require an extra degree of watching. Meaning that Rabba concedes that a finder is liable even for theft and loss, although he's only an unpaid custodian. He still holds by the unpaid custodian. But he said that animals that are likely to wander off by evidence of the fact that they were lost in the first place require a greater level of safeguarding, even though they're an unpaid custodian, but he sees it as negligence still, meaning the reason you're liable is you let them get lost because an animal has legs. It's not an ashtray. So therefore, the fact that it left and got lost is because of your negligence. I'm coming back to the fact that it's unpaid custodian and it's negligence. As far as it getting stolen is concerned, they said, well, how do you answer that? Because that, in fact, is a problem. When it gets lost, that's when somebody can steal it. If it's in other words, if your car's in your garage and it's sealed and you've got South African electric fencing and gap and armed response, it's less likely to get stolen. If you park your car down the road, it's more likely to get stolen. So the animal, by being lost, has a higher probability of getting stolen. So if it's stolen or lost, Rabba said that's negligence with regard to an animate object, like an animal. But an inanimate object, there's no negligence in that regard. So you can't say that it's because you're responsible for the fact that it's stolen or lost that you're seen as a paid custodian. No, again, I'm saying it's negligence because things that have feet are going to wander and things that are wandering are going to be stolen because they're not in property under protection. So again, he's claiming negligence in an unpaid custodian. Okay. So he's saying, even if you don't want to interpret it as the morning and afternoon session in terms of level of responsibility for negligence there, you can still use the term of animate and inanimate. Okay. Now, I think we can stop at that point there. We've got 5 minutes left. You might say that